Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're going to explore a deeply emotional moment when past wounds finally close, family warmth returns, and a long night of fear ends with quiet happiness and justice.
Let's get that leaf off
If
You're
you
so
enjoy
funny.
stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next episodes coming up. The night air is cold and quiet, the kind that seeps gently into your bones if you sit still for too long. In front of the small wooden house, a low fire crackles softly. Jack sits on one side of the fire, rubbing his hands together, while Tu Tien sits beside him, knees pulled close, watching the flames dance. The light flickers across their faces, warming them just enough to make the waiting bearable. "She should be back soon," Jack says, glancing toward the dark path leading down from the forest. Tu Tien nods, though her eyes remain fixed on the trees. She never stays out too long after sunset. The cold is worse tonight. They sit in silence for a moment, listening to the distant rustle of leaves and the soft pop of burning wood. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl calls, and the sound makes Tu Tien shiver, not from fear, but from the quiet weight of memory. Jack notices and shifts closer. "You okay?" Tu Tien exhales slowly. "I am, just thinking." Before Jack can ask more, footsteps crunch against dry leaves. Tu Tien's head lifts instantly. "There," she whispers. A familiar silhouette emerges from the trees, bent slightly under the weight of a woven basket strapped to her back. Grandma steps into the firelight, her breath visible in the cold air, her cheeks red from the wind. "Grandma!" Tu Tien stands up so fast her chair tips over. Grandma looks up, surprised for a heartbeat. Then her face breaks into a smile filled with disbelief. "Tu Tien?" she says softly. "Is that really you?" Tu Tien doesn't answer. She runs forward and wraps her arms around Grandma, pressing her face into the old woman's shoulder. Grandma drops her basket, holding Tu Tien tightly, both of them trembling as quiet sobs spill out between breaths. "I thought I wouldn't see you again," Grandma murmurs. "I prayed every day." Tu Tien's voice cracks. "I wanted to come sooner. I was scared. And then everything happened." Jack stands back, giving them space, his chest tightening at the sight. He clears his throat gently. "It's good to see you again, Grandma." Grandma pulls back just enough to look at him. "You kept your promise," she says. "You brought her back." Jack bows his head slightly. "We're just grateful she's safe." They help Grandma sit near the fire. Jack picks up her basket and sets it aside, while Tu Tien kneels to brush dirt from Grandma's sleeves, fussing over her like a worried daughter. "You shouldn't be out in this cold so long," Tu Tien says. "Your hands are freezing." Grandma chuckles. These old hands have known worse, but tonight, they feel warm again. Jack brings out a small folding table and sets it in front of them. "We brought something to eat." Tu Tien unwraps the food carefully. Ban chung, ban tet, and fresh fruit arranged neatly on a cloth. The steam rises faintly from the warm cakes, carrying a familiar, comforting smell. Grandma's eyes widen. "You didn't have to bring all this." "We wanted to," Tu Tien replies. "It wouldn't feel right otherwise." They sit together, sharing food in quiet gratitude. Grandma eats slowly, savoring each bite, while Jack pours hot tea into small cups. "This tastes like home," Grandma says. "I don't remember the last time I ate like this." Tu Tien reaches into a bag beside her and pulls out a thick jacket. "I bought this for you. Please wear it." Grandma hesitates. "Tu Tien, please." Tu Tien insists gently. "It's warmer than the one you have." She helps Grandma slip into the jacket, adjusting the collar carefully. Then she kneels again, pulling out a pair of sturdy shoes. "And these," she adds, "for walking the mountain paths." Grandma's eyes fill with tears. "You're taking care of me like I'm your child." Tu Tien smiles through her own tears. "You took care of me when I had nothing." She begins massaging Grandma's shoulders, her movements slow and careful, as if trying to erase years of hardship with her hands alone. Then she gently combs Grandma's hair, smoothing it back and tying it neatly. Jack watches quietly, feeling something settle in his chest, a sense of circle completed, of kindness returned. The fire burns lower as the night deepens. Eventually, Grandma looks toward the dark forest again. "It's time I go back. The path is easier before it gets too late." Tu Tien's face falls. "We'll come back," she says quickly. "At Lunar New Year, we promise." Jack nods. "We'll bring Anna too." Grandma smiles. "I'll be waiting." They walk her a short distance down the path, watching until her figure fades into the shadows. Tu Tien stands there longer than necessary, as if imprinting the moment into memory. On the way back, Jack's phone vibrates in his pocket. He answers without stopping. Jack speaking. The voice on the other end is firm, official. "This is Officer Thuy. We've made an arrest. Mrs. Thuy and her accomplices have been taken into custody. We need you and Tu Tien to come to the station to give statements." Jack stops walking. Tu Tien turns to him immediately. "What is it?" He lowers the phone slightly. They caught her. Tu Tien's breath catches. For a second, she doesn't know whether to feel relief or fear. Then she straightens her shoulders. "Let's go." The police station is brightly lit, sterile and quiet. Tu Tien sits across from Officer Thuy, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Jack sits beside her, close enough that their shoulders touch. Officer Thuy slides photos across the table. "Please confirm, is this the woman?" Tu Tien looks down and freezes. "That's her," she says softly. "And the man with her. They took my necklace. They pushed me. I hit my head. And then everything went dark." Jack's jaw tightens. He reaches for Tu Tien's hand under the table. Officer Thuy nods. "Your testimony helps a lot. We're processing everything now." When they finally step outside, the cold air feels different, lighter. The drive home is quiet. Neither of them speaks until they pull into the yard. They sit on the front steps sharing a simple dinner under the night sky. The house behind them glows softly. Jack breaks the silence. "Today was a lot." Tu Tien leans her head against his shoulder, but it was good, all of it. Jack looks out into the dark, then down at her. For the first time in a long while, it feels like things are finally settling. Tu Tien smiles faintly. "Let's enjoy it, just tonight." They sit together, eating slowly, letting the warmth of the moment linger, unaware of what tomorrow might bring, but grateful for the peace they have now. The night grows quieter after dinner. Jack rinses the dishes at the outdoor sink while Tu Tien folds the cloth they used on the porch. The sounds are small and ordinary, water running, fabric brushing against wood, but both of them feel how different tonight is from the ones before. The air no longer presses on their chests, it lets them breathe. When Jack finishes, he joins Tu Tien on the porch steps. She scoots closer without thinking, resting her shoulder against his arm. "Do you remember," she says softly, The first night I came here after everything happened? Jack nods. You couldn't sleep. I was afraid the dark would take me back there, she admits. To the forest, to the cold. He turns slightly toward her. And now? Tu Tien looks out at the yard, where the fence they built catches the moonlight. Now the dark feels like rest. Jack exhales slowly, letting that settle. A few minutes pass before Tu Tien speaks again. When I saw her at the station, I thought I would shake or cry. But you didn't, Jack says. I felt something else, she replies. Like a door closing, not loudly, just finally. Jack reaches for her hand. You were brave. Tu Tien squeezes his fingers. So were you. They sit there until the cold nips at their skin, then head inside. Jack locks the door carefully, habit he never skipped anymore. Tu Tien notices, but she doesn't flinch. She understands now that safety isn't fear, it's care. Inside, the house feels fuller than usual, as if the walls themselves are relieved. Tu Tien pours warm water into 2 cups and hands one to Jack. To today, she says quietly. Jack lifts his cup. To today. They drink in silence. Later, as Tu Tien prepares for bed, Jack stands at the doorway, watching her move around the room, slowly, thoughtfully, no longer rushed by anxiety. You should rest, he says. It's been a long day. She smiles. I will, but stay for a moment. Jack steps in and sits beside her on the bed. She leans back against the headboard, eyes half closed. Grandma looked happy today, Tu Tien murmurs. I think she knew something had changed. Jack considers that. Maybe she felt it in you. Tu Tien opens her eyes and looks at him. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Jack shakes his head. You did more than you think. She reaches up, touching his cheek gently. We did it together. They stay like that until Tu Tien's breathing deepens and sleep finally claims her. Jack pulls the blanket up carefully and turns off the light, leaving the door slightly open. He doesn't go to bed right away. Instead, he steps back onto the porch, phone in hand. There's a message from Officer Thuy waiting. Suspects will be transferred tomorrow morning. We may need you again for follow-up statements. Tonight, rest. Jack types a short reply. Thank you. We will. He pockets the phone and sits alone for a moment, listening to the quiet village sounds, the distant bark of a dog, the whisper of wind through leaves. For the first time in weeks, he doesn't feel like he needs to be ready to run. Inside, Anna stirs in her sleep and murmurs something soft and unintelligible. Jack smiles to himself and goes back in, checking on her briefly before heading to his own room. The next morning arrives gently. Sunlight filters through the window and Tu Tien wakes to the sound of Anna laughing somewhere in the house. For a split second, panic flickers, but it fades just as quickly. She gets up and finds Jack in the kitchen, lifting Anna onto a chair. Good morning, he says. Tu Tien smiles. Good morning. Anna claps her hands. Mama. Tu Tien scoops her up, pressing a kiss to her cheek. Someone is very happy today. Jack watches them, leaning against the counter. I think she feels it too. They eat breakfast together, unhurried. No phones buzz, no urgent calls break the calm. Afterward, Tu Tien steps outside, breathing in the crisp morning air. Jack joins her, hands in his pockets. Do you feel ready? He asks. For what? She replies. For whatever comes next. Tu Tien thinks for a moment, then nods. I do, because now I know. Even when things fall apart, they can be rebuilt. Jack smiles. That sounds like you. She laughs softly. In the distance, the road curves away from the house, quiet and empty. For now, nothing waits there. No shadows, no threats, just the promise of another ordinary day. Jack takes Tu Tien's hand and they stand together in the sunlight, not rushing, not worrying. For today, that is enough. After a long, cold wait by the fire outside the house, Jack and Tu Tien are reunited with Grandma as she returns from gathering herbs in the forest. Overwhelmed with emotion, Grandma and Tu Tien embrace, crying with relief and happiness. They share a simple meal together in the yard, laying out sticky rice cakes and fruit, enjoying a rare moment of warmth and peace. Tu Tien gently helps Grandma put on new warm clothes and shoes, massages her shoulders and combs her hair, promising they will return to visit her again during Lunar New Year. On the way home, Jack receives an unexpected call from the officer. Mrs. Thuy and her accomplices have been arrested. At the police station, Tu Tien confirms their crimes. That evening, Jack and Tu Tien sit together eating dinner on the porch, grateful that after so much hardship, joy has finally found its way back to them.